and girls, what's going on? It's your boy Peter here, aka Peter Freako Turd, baby. Bringing you guys an episode of the Movie Review Show, where the good movies are always reviewed. Okay, back into our movie review. And we're continuing ScreamFeast, motherfuckers! Alrighty. Continuing right from where my last review left off, for those who didn't see the opening to ScreamFest this year, we kicked ScreamFest off with a bang with talking about the 1988 classic Child's Play. A film that some people may admit was their introduction to horror, mine included, and boy is it a classic. Despite angering some people who basically thought that I was too young to see it, I loved it as a kid, and I still love it now. I love Brad Dourif. I love the effects. It's just all around a classic, and probably the darkest of the series. Love Child's Play. If you guys want a deeper analysis of it, check out my review. Well, now, here we are, continuing the series, talking about the sequel. Child's Play 2. Sorry, Jack. Chucky's back. Those who don't remember, that was the line. This is one of the best posters for a horror film ever. I love this poster. I would love to have a frame of it. But yeah, how does Child's Play 2 fare? Well, if you guys saw my review of the first, you probably would know. But for those who haven't, grab your scissors, grab whatever weapon you can, grab your Chucky dolls, and let us talk about Child's Play 2. Now, Child's Play 2, this is a film made in 1990, and this is directed by a guy named John Lafia, or John Lafia as I called him in the first, like tomato. But for those who haven't seen my review of the first, those who wouldn't know that John Lafia, this is actually a guy who had a hand in co-writing the first after Tom Holland had stepped away to direct Fatal Beauty. And he was originally touting himself to actually direct the first one, but they declined to let him direct due to his inexperience. After the first Child's Play, he would go on to direct a movie called The Blue Iguana. And it was clear after the success of the first Child's Play that it would get a sequel, which is especially how the president of United Artists saw it at the time. I mean, judging by the box office, can you blame them? And they originally thought Don Mancini wasn't up for returning to the franchise, thinking that Don saw it as a one-and-done deal in the same way Wes Craven did with the original Nightmare on Elm Street. So they had a script penned by Mark Patrick Carducci, which would have dealt with Andy in a mental institution, as people thought he's the one who committed the murders, and Chucky shows up there and tries to get his soul into him again. Don had found out, though, that a sequel was in the planning stages and called John Lafia up about the fact that the sequel was in production and said they wanted to be a part of it. So they started writing a script, and much like the first, where Don drew influence from his personal life, John also drew influence from his personal life growing up in a foster home, which he decided to incorporate into the story. Don also had a say on how the story should go, as he wanted the factory to be more of a focus, creating this illusion of consumerism in the making, something that he wanted to touch upon in his script for the first. MGM compared the two scripts and ultimately liked Don's more, and allowed the film to go forward with a budget of $13 million, a budget in the range of the first. And they originally intended the film to begin production in 1989, but a setback happened. MGM got bought out by Quintex, who was not a horror fan, and forbade the production of going forward, as they saw the outcry the first one had. This meant the series went up for auction, with various studios lining up, with the buyer landing with Universal Pictures. Apparently Disney and Touchstone were at one point interested. Thank God that didn't happen, because who knows what they would have done with Chucky. But that's a deal you could thank Steven Spielberg for, as he convinced David Kirshner into accepting a negative pickup deal with the studio. So Steven Spielberg, thank you for saving this franchise. Therefore, transferring the budget from the original studio to this one, and finally kicking the film into production, with the crew making a decision on who the cast members would be. A lot of them, or a couple of them, actually returning from the first. Those two being the most obvious. The movie was shot this time in California on the Universal Studios lot, an area they tried to convince the crew from the first film to shoot in to keep the costs low. When shooting the film, John wanted the film to feel like it was being shot from the perspective of a child, as well as Chucky's perspective. Therefore, employing the use of a lot of wide angle and low angle shots to be used, depth of field shots, and bright colors, with some others being off kilter. Kevin Yeager returned to do the animatronics on Chucky and the effects work. Unlike the first, which had Ed Gale playing Chucky in certain scenes, Chucky was fully animatronic, with Brad Dourif returning to do the voice of Chucky and recording his lines as Chucky ahead of time so the animatronic could match up with his lip movement. And the 9 operators who worked on the first one returned. While it was great to use more animatronics, it proved problematic as some scenes had to be directed by Kevin due to the fact the animatronics would break down in certain scenes. In fact, shooting a scene would sometimes take longer than intended due to John wanting to get the best shots of Chucky that he could. Shooting lasted for a specific amount of time, and John managed to get the film in the can. And just the TV spots of this film built upon the fan base that the first one had created. You had the fans screaming, "Chucky! Chucky! Chucky!" I remember the one guy going on that, "More Chuck for the buck!" So it goes to show you the fan base that the first one had created. But the movie opened on November 9th, 1990, the 2-year anniversary of the first, and it opened at the box office on its opening weekend, grossing over $10 million in a single weekend. And it finished its run with over $35 million at the box office, making it a hit for Universal. While less than the first, it was still considered a hit, enough for them to move forward with a third one. On the reception side, compared to the first, this one's a lot more mixed, as on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 44%. Critics that loved the film praised it for being an effective slasher and being well made. However, some criticized the film for being mean-spirited. Gene Siskel in particular, who listed this as one of the worst films of the year, which, I'm sorry, I disagree with that, no. I find it weird that Roger Ebert liked the first one, but had a lot of bad to say about this one. That's ridiculous, when this one, practically the same idea of the first, so I don't know what changed, Roger. That, however, didn't take the audience away, who, as time went on, I've started to hear people say that this one is their favorite film of the series, as even though on the audience side it has a 53%, on IMDb it has a 6 out of 10. Now, I mentioned before in my review for the first Child's Play that these were the films that got me into horror. And when I was officially into horror and Chucky became my go-to series, this one and 3 were the ones that I would watch the most. Whenever these movies were on TV, I would watch them constantly. So upon rewatching the first Child's Play and still loving it, I wonder how I would feel about 2. And I gotta say, rewatching it, I love this one. And I'd probably say this is my second favorite Child's Play film, which I said in the first one, but I still stand by it as I thought my opinion was going to change. We'll get to my favorite next. But I can totally see why a lot of people consider this one their favorite one. And I definitely think this movie really creates the Chucky image that we know him as today. I'll get deeper into that later. But with the cast of this film, you have Alex Vincent reprising his role from the first one, and Brad Dourif reprising his role as the voice of Chucky. But you got some new actors. You got Christine Elise as this character Kyle, who was in Body Snatcher, the remake from 1993, and she was also in Boiling Point with Wesley Snipes. You have Jenny Agutter, who was surprised to see in this. Jenny Agutter from An American Werewolf in London. She also had a quick role in Darkman. You have Gerrit Graham, who was actually on that TV show The Critic. He played Frank. And those are the main actors. You have a few people I was surprised to see, like Adam Wiley has a small role in this. Yes, Adam from All Dogs Go to Heaven 2 is in this. I was like, holy shit, there's Adam. Beth Grant is also in this from Speed. Grace Zabriskie from Armageddon, and even Greg German from Clear and Present Danger, as well as Ally McBeal. So the cast is a little bit bigger than that of the first. But getting into the plot of this movie, the plot is basically, the movie takes place 2 years after the events of the first, and the good guy company is dealing with the fallout Andy Barclay put the company in, as the company is now under bad publicity as Andy's mother backed her son up in court, and the result of that is now she's under psychiatric evaluation, and Andy, played by Alex Vincent, has now been placed in an orphanage. The orphanage, also not taking Andy's story seriously and looking to place him in a healthy environment, hire this foster family named Phil and Joanne Simpson, played by Jenny Agutter and Gerrit Graham, to temporarily adopt him till his mother's psychiatric evaluation finishes. There he meets a runaway named Kyle, played by Christine Elise, who is also living there, and all seems well. But darkness can come back around and haunt anybody. Because meanwhile, the company making the good guy dolls, seeing the negative publicity Andy gave them and believing this whole thing to be a practical joke, get the burnt remains of Chucky and fix him up to prove this is a joke. And that reawakens Chucky, played by Brad Dourif, who finds out where Andy is and follows him to the foster home so he can transfer his soul into him. So now Andy, with no one believing him, has to defend himself against Chucky before he succeeds in getting what he wants. Will he be able to win this game of hide the soul, or will Chucky slash his way to cheating and become one with Andy? Now, I think what makes Child's Play 2 a really strong follow-up is the fact that it does a great job continuing on from the first movie's storyline. And I think that has a lot to do with Don Mancini at the helm. And I appreciate for the sequel that as much as he dislikes Chucky being a criminal, as opposed to him stemming from a regular doll that comes to life with Andy's blood mixing with the doll's fake blood, I appreciate that even though he had creative control here, he didn't retcon the original idea and try to give him a new backstory. Because considering how Don acted with Tom during the making of the first, you'd think that because he has more creative control here, he would try to pull that shit. But he didn't, so round of applause for him there. I may not like the shit he says about Tom Holland, but I applaud him for sticking by that story element, especially since a lot of people like that, including myself. But along with that, I also gotta say, I like how the story continues in this one on the theme of and how hard it is to believe something as innocent as a doll could be killing people. And I like the focus here being more on Andy as opposed to Karen from the first. And the movie builds on the development of Andy after what he went through in the first. As you see a lot of growth in his character now because people still don't believe him because the good guy doll company is really trying to cover their tracks and make themselves look better, and pretty much that still is putting salt on the wound after everything, and you see him dealing with the trauma. But he's not afraid to do what's right and go and protect people. Like later on in the film when he's had it up to here with Chucky and he goes down to the kitchen and grabs the electric knife and goes to take Chucky down. There's a sense of maturity to him and the character. And you feel like he's going through some form of an arc that is continuing in this movie. Along with that, the feel of this movie is marginally different, which may turn some people off because the first one is a lot darker. It has a lot more of that noir feel of the 80s. This has lost that feel. It's more in the vein of a hard R fairy tale. That's the best way to say it. And I also really like how it touches upon that with them reading Pinocchio and him being tied down like Gulliver's Travels. I thought it was clever ways to really incorporate that this is a fairy tale. I also really like the idea of the foster home. I thought it made the location distinct from the first film. And in that Andy has someone to connect with there, that being Kyle. But she's totally different from Karen in the first film. I like that she's a troublemaker and she understands Andy's troubles. So I appreciate that they created this character and giving someone Andy to connect with in the same way he did with his mom in the first one. And watching this again, I forgot how short this one. This one is like an hour and 24 minutes. So it's really short. But the way it's paced makes it seem like there's a lot going on in this movie. And another positive to be had with this one is the Jaws effect is not used in this one. Chucky is definitely seen a lot more in this one as now because everyone knows he's the killer, unlike the first where it was more of a mystery, which going for more of the Jaws 2 effect. But if you like Chucky in the first, you definitely get more of him here. So while the overall story distinguishes itself in tone from the first, it has fun with the idea and really gets creative with the feel of this one. Now, on a technical side, despite being made for the same amount of money as the first one, I think John does a great job directing this movie. At times, I'll be honest and say it, I think he kind of outdoes the directing that Tom Holland did in the first one. I love the idea that he incorporated the child's POV with the camera, especially in the scene where Chucky is in the closet and the camera is at Andy's height as he is going towards the door, and later on the teacher walks in who's going to drag him out. And I love his placement of the camera in certain scenes, in particular the scene where they put the camera behind the rack of clothes, tricking us into thinking Chucky is there. Even just the scene at the foster home where Chucky first walks in and the camera pans from upstairs to like this going downstairs. His movement of the camera in certain scenes really fits with the movie. And his use of darkness and shadows on particular sets creates a nice mood for certain scenes. In particular, the basement scene when Andy goes down there to try and kill Chucky, and how the shadow and lighting is placed on certain objects or around the laundry that is hung up. And you see there's a shadow of Chucky running by. I think it did a well done job in using lightning and shadows in its own way compared to the first, and contributed to the film's new tone. The way Chucky is also shot is a lot better in this one. It's practically all animatronic, which I'll talk about later, and no shots of a midget in a suit. I appreciate the fact that they decided to shoot more with animatronics, and the way Kevin and John shoot Chucky, I like that there's more shots of him on his feet, more shots of him movement, whereas the first there were more shots from the torso up here, kind of hiding that he was being pushed by a trolley. So I like how they made good use of shooting the film and the animatronics. And when it comes to kills and gore, which this one ups, I think those are shot well. Like the scene when he kills the teacher, stabbing her with the bicycle pump, and she flies out of the closet and starts beating her with a ruler. I like how when they show him beating the woman and the teacher screaming as each hit goes on, and it cuts outside the window, and each hit is like cuts back the more and more he's smacking her. I love that. You still see some pain and you still get a sense of gore, but it's not over the top and it's not exploitive and really artsy in a lot of scenes. So overall, John does a great job taking over the director's chair from Tom Holland, and at times outdoes him. Along with that, the acting is also great. Alex Vincent does a great job in this movie. You can tell he's improved his acting chops. I think of the two, the first one, the second one, I think this is his best performance as Andy. I like the fact that he's showing a bit more maturity in this one, as he is still dealing with the trauma he endured in the first. And it's interesting to have a movie like this touch upon trauma from the view of the age Andy is in this one, whereas with any other movie, the person would be much older. I mean, we'll get more into that with Child's Play 3, but that isn't something you see often, and I like how naturally Andy plays that side of him. He doesn't have the squeaky voice as much in this one, kind of showcasing his maturity. I like the scene when pretty much he's listening to the parents talk, and they're like, he hasn't come to terms with this doll thing, and he's like, you know what, I gotta get over this fear. And they had a doll that looked like Chucky, which was called Tommy, which is a nod to Tom Holland. And at first he thinks like, oh, it's Chucky, because because Chucky is there already, because Tommy ended up being beat to death by Chucky. And he's checking to see if there's any batteries, because as you guys know, in the first one, he had no batteries. That's how he was alive. But he looks in, there's batteries. He's like, fuck this, I gotta get over this fear. I like that they did that aspect of him. I like that there's a sense that Andy is like, maybe they're right. I'm with a new family. Maybe it's time to grow up. But of course he can't, because Chucky followed him. And with that, I like that he's still smart in certain situations, like the scene in the classroom. The reason why the window was open was because he jumped out the window to escape because Chucky basically put on his paper, "Fuck you, bitch," which I thought was hilarious. So you see, okay, he's still smart, he's not dumb, he's learned a lot from the first, and he's learning to take care of himself. And he has more scenes with him fighting Chucky and working with the animatronics and reacting to it in the right way. So all around, Alex Vincent does a great job. Christine Elise as Kyle, I thought she was great, playing this runaway who you kind of see she kind of plays a bit of a sister figure to Andy. I think her and Alex play great off each other, like when she's smoking and he tries to smoke too, and she's like, "What the hell are you doing?" He's like, "I wanted to taste it. Get real, tastes like shit. These things are very bad for you." I liked her. I like how she's talking to him and just how later on they go on about the other foster home she's been with, and she's like, "I've been around foster homes that would have people that would rip your head off just for looking at them." I like that line. So Kristen Ellis, I thought, did a good job. I'd like to see more of her character come back in another one. Gerrit Graham, I thought he played a good douche, which, yeah, he's a douche, but you can kind of understand where he's coming from because he doesn't know the things that we know, which my friend Mike talked about. But he means well. You get an idea that he means well. He just lives in reality and just looks at this situation as just Andy trying to use his imagination to make sense of the incident. So he did well. He did very well. Jenny Agutter, it was nice to see her, being that American Werewolf in London is one of the best werewolf movies ever made, if not the best. But she plays the nicer one of the two foster parents, as you see her taking a liking to Andy, reading him a book to bed and singing him the lullaby. You get the idea this is a good-hearted woman who's very welcoming and understanding of the whole incident with Andy. It is sad where her character goes. I'm not going to spoil it. But Jenny Agutter I like. Of course, Brad Dourif playing Chucky, who gets back into the role of Chucky perfectly. I'd argue in this one, he feels more psycho and maniacal in this one than he did in the first because he's on screen more, he talks more in this one, and it allows Brad to basically play him more. This is some of my favorite lines, too, when he's locked in the room and he's trying to convince Andy to let him out. "Please, let me out of here, Andy. It's dark in here. I promise I won't kill anyone else, okay?" And then he's like, "Okay, the nice guy act isn't working." And then he's like, "Now open the goddamn door! Let me out, you little dick! Let me the fuck out!" Just how Chucky realizes the nice guy act isn't working and tries to turn on the dime and be like, "Fuck that. Okay, you pissed me off." And just how he goes back to yelling. And just Brad's yelling really sells it. So the acting is really solid. But of course, let's talk about what we want to talk about. The special effects and the animatronics. Which, along with being shot better, the practical effects and animatronics look much better. You can tell the team wanted to improve upon the already fantastic effects of the first film. And you could tell they put, despite having the same budget as the first, you can tell they really put a lot of money into improving the effect. The face on Chucky looks a lot more expressive and the movement looks a lot more realistic. There's a great mix of practical puppetry and animatronics in there. Definitely looks very good. Even though the movie doesn't do the whole thing with him becoming more human and you see that, he remains like that the whole time, I still think it looks very cool. And the kills, as I said, are very good. I touched upon one already, but I'll touch upon another one. One guy gets suffocated with a bat. Another guy falls into a conveyor belt after he's stabbed by Chucky, and he gets doll eyes plucked into his eyes because he was fixing the machine. So yeah, the kills are a lot more cooler and vicious, and it ends in a great final, that being the toy factory, which they actually shot on a real factory. It's a very climatic battle. I love how John makes use of the factory and just how when you think it's going to end, it keeps going and going as they go through each area. It was a really cool setup for an ending. So I'm not going to spoil as much about it, but you got to see the movie to see it. Definitely one of the best finals in the series. The next one, my favorite, is another great final. I'll touch upon that next. But yeah, overall, I love this one. I can definitely see why this is a fan favorite of the series. And I can definitely understand why I spent the most time watching this one and 3. And in terms of cons, the only problem that I did have with the movie was some aspects of the story that didn't make sense. For example, there's a scene in the movie, and this is going to be nitpicking, but there's a scene in the movie when Chucky calls up the foster home and asks for Andy, posing as his Uncle Charles. How does nobody question him about being his uncle or asking for identification? No research, none of that. It makes no sense. But then again, you can point out other flaws like that in other movies because we wouldn't have a movie. But here it just felt like we got to get Chucky to the house. Let's just have him call up the place and ask. Granted, this is 1990, but still, just felt stupid. And other things, I do wish, like the first, that they did keep the whole thing with the deleted scenes because it could have used some character development, especially with Jenny Agutter. I know she's mad about that, but those are really my two only problems with the movie, because bottom line, Child's Play 2 is an awesome sequel that distinguishes itself from the first in a way that more sequels should take note of. I think it's honestly one of the best horror films of the 90s and one of the best films in the series, and it improves upon the already great aspects of the first one. So yes, I highly recommend Child's Play 2. But when it comes down to it, I give Child's Play 2 a 9.8 out of 10. And it deserves it. And therefore gets the Alexandra seal of approval. Definitely one to check out. If you love the first, you're definitely going to like this one. But yeah, I love Child's Play 2. And I forgot how much fun it is. But that's my review for Child's Play 2, and next time I am going to do a review on Child's Play 3, but I'm also working on my review of Strangeland, as that's a film that I have been dying to review. It's just, I have a big thing to talk about because I'm just waiting for some info on the effects, because I got in contact with Michael Burnett. I won't say how, but got in contact with him online, and I'm asking him some questions about the effects on Strangeland because I want to incorporate that in the review because that's an aspect I really do want to talk about. But that's coming. When I get some word on that, I'll get into the writing thing and just get that filming. But that's a review that's coming. I will do a review on Urban Legend for ScreamFest. But those are my next few reviews. For right now, I'll see you guys later. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of Child's Play 2. Do you guys like this more than the first, or are you one of the few who likes the first one better? I'd love to know your thoughts. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.